This Week in Radio Tech, episode 230, is brought to you by the lineup of IP audio studio gear from Axia, each one protected by an industry-leading 5-year warranty. By Lavo, maker of the new Crystal Clear virtual radio console. Crystal Clear is the radio console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. And by the Telos HX6 talk show system. Give your phones an instant upgrade with the 6-line dual hybrid Telos HX6. Hey, Chris Tobin and me, Kirk Harnack, have been broadcast engineers for, well, a few decades. This week, we're both encouraged by our conversations with Eric Adler, a broadcast engineer at WSKG Public Broadcasting. Eric's also the chapter chair for SBE Chapter number 1 in Binghamton, New York. We're all sharing stories, tricks, tips, and more on this episode of TWiRT. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. This is the show where we talk about radio technology, and we have a blast doing it. We got a bunch of things to talk about on this show as well. We have a guest too. But first, let's check in with our co-host. We're both in the same state, I assume. I'm in New York State, although I'm in the state capital of Albany, and Chris Tobin usually hangs out in Manhattan. Chris, welcome in. Where are you?
Why, thank you. No, today I'm actually in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, goodness, okay.
I'm across the river and very far south of you. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But, here in New York City, Newark, New Jersey, and Connecticut's considered New York. So I'll just say, yes, I'm in New York.
Well, I drove around upstate New York this week, and I got to enjoy the plethora of toll roads. Oh, my goodness. You have to pay to go everywhere.
Oh, yes. New Jersey's no different. It's
really?
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I got to say, I'm 52 years old. It's been about 49 years since I've really been around upstate New York very much. As a child, I lived in Rochester and a couple other smaller towns in upstate New York. And all I remember is snow taller than me. And Mom would send me out in my mittens and my coat. And I'd go out and be out there, for what, a minute and a half. And I'd say, Mommy, I want to come in.
Well, you get some of the best scenery in upstate New York. I had friends up in Syracuse and Utica, Sherburne, that I used to see all the time and go up and down from Brooklyn up to upstate New York. And during the wintertime, yes, the snow is very high. And even in May, there was snow. So that's par for the course. But it's a great place to be. It really is
you're right
this time of year also.
Yeah. You're right about being beautiful because, since I've lived in Tennessee, I've always thought Tennessee was just gorgeous for scenery and hills and trees and mountains. And I didn't realize how mountainous it is. Just the drive between Albany and where we had our SBE convention in Verona. It is just gorgeous. Some of the valleys there and the small mountains are just absolutely beautiful. And, of course, the trees are all changing colors. So it's breathtaking in some places. Really gorgeous. Didn't know that.
Yep. You can't beat the vistas. And this time of year with the trees, the leaves turning color, best time. You pick the best time to check it out.
Well, actually, I didn't pick it, of course. It's the folks at SBE Chapter 22, I believe, who put on this expo every year in Verona. And this year, the SBE National convention meeting was held there as well. Now, we've got on the show with us a guest who's from this area. It is Eric Adler. Eric, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Thank you, Kirk.
You are in what town yourself?
I am currently in Vestal, New York. That's right near Binghamton.
Ah, okay.
So
is that considered upstate? Do you have pretty scenery and trees too?
We have pretty scenery and trees, and since I'm from New Jersey, this is upstate. Around here, it's the southern tier.
Okay. Now, Binghamton, a good part of our show is going to be chatting about SBE, or at least part of it is, because you and I just came from that meeting, that national meeting, and the expo that's held that hosted the national meeting. So Binghamton, that's SBE Chapter number 1. How did that happen?
Yes, as the story has been relayed to me, I was not around when SBE was formed, but when a gentleman put forth a proposal in a trade magazine saying, "I want to form this new thing called the SBE." At that time, I believe it was something different. I think it was the IBE. I could be wrong.
IBE or IRE? IBE. Yeah.
And he said, "Come to NAB and see me." And there was already a group of guys here in Binghamton that met around Charles Hallinan's kitchen table, and they went to NAB and said, "Hey, we'll be Chapter 1," and they formed Chapter 1. And we actually had a member that was granted a fellowship in SBE. It was presented at the meeting yesterday. He was one of the guys that was there, Gino Riccadelli.
Oh yeah, Gino Riccadelli. Yeah, if you follow my my Facebook feed, you saw a picture of Gino receiving an award. This guy, we're going to be all over the map here on today's show, I fear. But this guy, Gino Riccadelli, who's now an SBE engineer fellow or fellow engineer, he in World War II he was protecting undersea cables from the Germans. That was one of his jobs. How cool is that? I guess it's just amazing that was his job. Then he got into broadcasting, and now he's an older gentleman, but boy, sure gets around, and got up and spoke last night. Good fella. Hey, so this SBE meeting, Eric, I went there because I'm fortunate enough to be on the board of directors of SBE. We had a board of directors meeting, looked at some ways to help bring more people into the SBE. A couple of cool announcements will be coming out over the next few weeks or months. Some additional benefits for being an SBE member are going to come our way that were approved in our board meeting and now just have to be put into action by the staff in Indianapolis. Eric, what with SBE, aren't you the chapter chairman there in chapter number 1?
Yeah, yes.
Tell me, as chapter
1.
chairman, what are some of the things that you try to get done? Do you arrange for speakers or meetings? What's your function there as the chairman?
We work together. I mean, of course, as chair, I run the meetings. We work together to try and find different speakers for different meetings. We have a gentleman, Fred Montalvo, that does the research for different speakers, and we're trying to reach out to get speakers to give more technical presentations and to also bring more production folks in and see what it is that they want to know, so we can expand our chapter a little bit.
Gotcha. Do you find that I was surprised in our report of how many actually new members have come in to SBE? We get about 600 new members every year, and that's well over 10% of the total body of SBE members. I'm a little surprised at that figure. I think it's great, and of course we want it to be even higher. There in Binghamton, do you have some new members coming in from time to time? Are you losing people through attrition?
We are around 10 members. We occasionally lose people through attrition. We have people come on. We just had one member rejoin this year. We had, I believe, 2 new members last year. Mm-hmm. But being so small and in such a small market, we don't see much ebb and flow, nor do we see much expansion. So we're trying to reach out to more production folks. We actually had the fellows from Linear Acoustic came by this summer, and we had some of the students at the Binghamton University Student Station came by, so we're hoping to draw them in.
At SBE meetings, I find it's great when you can get other groups together, especially a student group from a high school or university, maybe a recording class, maybe have a joint meeting with your AES section, your chapter, if you will, for that area, or your SMPTE chapter. Hey, Chris Tobin, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Are you an SBE member there in your area?
Yes, I am vice chairman of the New York City chapter, and we have our meeting next week, the 16th of October.
What are New York City? I always imagine that as a market where you've got highly experienced engineers. It's kind of hard to break in there. Although a guest on our show a few weeks ago, David Antoine, did break in because he lived there. What are you finding at your SBE chapter with regard to bringing in new members? Is this a tough thing, or how's that work for you?
Well, membership is tough because a lot of folks don't understand the industry we're in and where they may fit or where their talents may apply. But we've had a very good run. We've had a lot of new members come in, a lot of folks who, right out of school, other folks who are in other industries who decided that this was the way to go. And the nice thing is the New York City chapter for years, and I've been involved in it for over 20 years, we've always promoted the camaraderie, the mentorship, or if you're somebody who's afraid to talk to someone who's been around for so long, we have open ears, if you will. And I think that's helped a lot. And we've made that known to folks at meetings we've done both at public venues or at our regular monthly meetings. And I think that's what helps the membership. But yeah, we've done well. I mean, we've had it ebbs and flows, but for the most part, we've done very well. We had a lot of young folks out of school come in and just want to get into more video-related stuff. and they're finding the certification programs help. They find the meetings are nice because they get to talk to folks who are willing to share, knowing that they're not on the spot, they're not at the office. They're in a neutral or neutral place to talk about things.
Hey, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors right now on the show. And when we come back from that, I want to talk a little bit about benefits of SBE. And I don't mean, well, you get this newsletter. Well, you get tips and tricks. Well, you can go to a convention. There's actually something that's much bigger than that. And it's something that I forget about from time to time. And when I think about it, I think that is the reason that I belong to SBE. So we're going to come back with that in just a minute. I want to tell you about our sponsor, and that is Axia Audio. I happen to work for these folks, and they're just terrific. And of course, they're the folks who make audio over IP studio systems, audio consoles. First thing we tend to think about Axia. But Axia also makes intercom systems for broadcast. They work over the same audio over IP network as the rest of the Axia gear does. They also, you can build routing systems out of Axia. And some broadcasters only use Axia for routing. You can also build a snake out of Axia LiveWire gear. A couple of nodes tied together with copper or fiber, and you have a snake. Or a multi-room distribution system. Let's say that you have a legacy audio console mixing system in place. Well, you can just add nodes. And this is what they did at WQXR some years ago. They had legacy consoles in place that they weren't going to replace. They worked fine, but they needed a much more up-to-date solution for routing audio around the studios. And so they put in place some Axia nodes, an Ethernet switch, and some Cat6 cable, and voila, you have a routing system. The things that Axia can do are just amazing, and I got reminded of this myself in the last month when I had to move my radio stations in Mississippi from a rented studio building to the studio building that our company bought. And there's no way I could have gotten that place moved by myself, essentially, using the analog wiring, the punch blocks, and the analog routing switchers that were in place in the racks. Did it with Axia, got it done pretty much by myself. The move it took a couple of days really to get the move done. Now, getting all the automation systems programmed is another story, and solving a couple problems with the STLs and things like that. But man, the actual console and audio routing and contact closures, bam, that's taken care of in literally a couple of days. Just amazing. If you want to save yourself time and trouble and enjoy what is absolutely the clearest audio that you're going to hear, there's just no degradation in a system like this. Check it out, if you would, please, on the web at axiaaudio.com. There's one more reason the folks at Axia are so confident in their products. Are they perfect? No, but whose are? You got a 5-year warranty. A 5-year warranty on the gear. That is just industry unprecedented. And Axe has been offering that 5-year warranty for, I want to say, 6 or 7 years now. There's actually things that were bought under 5-year warranty that finally have gone out of warranty. But we still support them. So remember that when you're comparing systems, the 5-year warranty that Axia offers at axiaaudio.com. And I meet people. I had dinner last night with a guy sitting next to me. I had no idea. He's got like 7 or 8 studios. And he's adding 2, 3, 4 studios more, and it becomes just a matter of plugging in a few Ethernet cables and setting the equipment in and then doing some typing and getting things configured. AxiaAudio.com, I believe in this stuff. It's just wonderful, and I'm so delighted that Axia is sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. AxiaAudio.com. All right, back on the show here. It's a War Stories episode. We will get to some war stories. Our co-host is Chris Tobin, and our guest is Eric Adler from Binghamton, New York. And I want to mention one of the benefits of being with SBE, and I found out through a video that was shown at the members meeting, the membership meeting yesterday, to the members who were there and present. And the video will be available on the SBE website in short order. A few days it should be there if it's not there already. That part of the big reason why SBE was formed was just to promote the sharing of knowledge and camaraderie amongst engineers. As engineers, we often work either alone or with the same 1 or 2 people all the time. If you work at a station that has multiple engineers, so you don't get to meet other engineers that work at other stations, that maybe work in radio and you work in TV, or vice versa, that nowadays work in another multimedia field, like full-time streaming operations, digital media. And SBE I guess this is the reason why I belong to SBE. the camaraderie, and the getting to share with each other of information, knowledge, and technologies. Eric, would you say that that's a darn good reason to be a member of SBE?
Absolutely, Kirk. I mean, some of the guys, like we mentioned earlier, Gino Orchidelli and all of the other guys in the chapter here, they've been working in different parts of the business for years, and they have stories, and they know things that I could never even imagine knowing. And just being able to share with them the things that we find out and learning from each other, and just the camaraderie of speaking with each other about the things that, there's not that many people out there that do.
So Chris Tobin, you might recall we did a show a couple of years ago where SBE in Nashville had our monthly meeting at a shortwave transmitter site that I really didn't know where it was. It's about a 45-minute drive east of Nashville. But the proprietor there welcomed us all in, had dinner for all of us, and showed us around 3 big honking shortwave transmitters and the rhombic antennas that were outside. Just an amazing place. And with all that RF there, he actually had some Axia gear there to distribute audio around so it wouldn't get full of RF. But for me, Chris, going and meeting at a location that you wouldn't ordinarily go to, that's a significant benefit of SBE.
Oh, absolutely. And I can assure you, and I'm not the only chapter here in this SBE organization that probably experiences this, but whenever we do studio tours, transmitter tours, or out of the ordinary locations for meeting places, the attendance goes up greatly, and we get to see a lot of folks we only talk to by phone. So, yes, the attraction is definitely. But the camaraderie, the sharing of knowledge, that is true, and that is what makes a successful organization. And I will say that the New York chapter, we've done a lot of that, and I can say personally, when I got involved many, many, many years ago, I was actually contracted working with a college radio station. And I was doing some work with them. And this was back in the days of the 1890 docket, which was where Class D non-commercial stations that were 10 watts were being permitted to move to a 100-watt position in the commercial band if there was spacing, if the criteria was met.
Yeah.
Well, I worked with a college station that managed to convince the FCC to allow that to happen on paper, fully. All the facts, information, mathematics, everything proved out. There was nothing, no emotional portions of the paperwork. The FCC actually granted a construction permit. However, the 2 neighboring commercial stations were not too happy with that idea, and crazy things happened. But the best part of that story is that I would go to the SBE meetings at the New York Times Theater when they were held there, and I get to sit with the engineers of the 2 radio stations that were currently fighting with the college station. And we would all agree that this is a neutral area, and we're going to have a gentleman's handshake, and whatever we say and do here will remain in the theater of the New York Times. And we were like, okay, now what do I know? I'm a young kid. I'm learning. The 2 guys that were involved in this, years later, I'd get a chance to actually work with them in other commercial ventures, and we'd laugh and look back. But because of the SBE's sharing of knowledge, camaraderie, and the opportunity to bring people together to talk, I got a chance to sit next to the guys who I fought with, beat, and then they beat me because they had more power when it comes to politics, their organizations, because as it was put to me when I went down to Washington, sat at the FCC office and explained my case, and the FCC person was like, well, your case is sound, your mathematics is correct, and you're right, we should be issuing you this construction permit. However, it was issued, you had it for a month, we now have to rescind it. And I asked, why is that? He goes, well, let me put it to you this way, kid. You want to put a 10-watt radio station, college station, in the middle of a commercial dial position located in New York City. That's all I'm going to say. I sat there going, oh. He goes, that's really the crux of it. Anything beyond that, I don't even know what to say. But you just read into it, and I'm sure you'll figure out what I'm trying to tell you. And I'll never forget that conversation. I still have a copy of the construction permit, and I still have the engineering exhibits I did. And funny thing, over those years, my buddy and I who put together the paperwork, we discovered other non-coms doing frequency changes. And interestingly enough, a lot of their exhibits look just like the ones I did. Just like so SBE was very instrumental and helped me understand beyond the engineering of broadcasting, and that as no matter how good the math is, no matter how you think you've got it, at the end of the day, it all may depend on who you know.
Now that situation with non-coms in the commercial band it changed a bit now. Can you not? You can now be in the commercial part of the band and be non-commercial and promise to be that way. Isn't that?
Oh,
isn't
yes,
that right?
yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. This is way before it became vogue for commercial stations to sort of allow other things to happen around them.
Now, speaking of other venues to have SBE meetings, Eric was telling me that you guys just did a field trip, if you will, to Macintosh Labs, and we're not talking about the computer here. We're talking about the gorgeous high-end hi-fi gear made by Macintosh. Tell us about that, Eric.
That's a great tour. That is a great tour.
Yeah, they're right here on the south side of Binghamton. I actually moved into their neighborhood recently, just about a mile away. But every year around NAB time, all of the vendors that normally would come around and all the guys that give presentations go out to Las Vegas in April. So we try to have a meeting every month here, and we reached out to the folks at Macintosh Labs, and they were more than gracious in giving us a tour through their whole facility, their fabrication areas, their assembly areas, and into their wonderful theater full of Macintosh Labs equipment. Everything in there.
I've never owned any Macintosh Labs gear. We actually have some of this gear at Telos in our support department and in R&D. We use it for when Telos brought out that when Omnia actually brought out that single sideband FM stereo. Where you eliminate the upper sideband of the stereo subcarrier. We wanted to make sure it would work on what it would work on if it was going to cause any problems out in the field. And so a Macintosh tuner is like a reference tuner for us there. What else did you see, Erica, at Macintosh that was just fabulously intriguing?
Oh, they had the full process for coating their transformers in tar. So it prevents the layers from vibrating, as they explained it to us. So you don't get hum on the transformer. They also were assembling giant speaker assemblies from small speakers about that size, just 40 of them arrayed, possibly even more. They were building all sorts of things. They etch their own glass. They have a water jet glass cutter. That's how they make their beautiful front panels on all their equipment. If you've ever seen Macintosh equipment, it's a nice dark color, and when it turns on, it lights up green.
Yeah,
just beautiful equipment.
Chris Tobin, you specify Macintosh gear in your station builds?
Oh, boy, I sure wish I could. Yeah, the closest I get to that is Genelec speakers. That's about it. I've had Macintosh products over the years, and they are definitely a lab-calibrated standard. They are great.
I have never owned one. What do you suggest for a newbie who hears all about Macintosh Labs stuff? And what do I need to start with? An amplifier, a preamp, a tuner? What's interesting for a newbie? Not that I have the money.
I guess you'd have to do the power amp, and a nice set of speakers, and then the rest is just whatever you want to put into it.
Yeah. Okay. What speakers do you like to see paired with a Macintosh amp? Eric, you mentioned some Macintosh speakers. Are they in the speaker making business too?
I am not sure. I know they were assembling speakers. I'm not sure just how far their business reaches there. I know they do calibration of everything. I mean, they have a very nice anechoic chamber in their little development area there. Can fit probably 8 people in it. So it was
wow.
Very interesting tour.
Well,
if you come on up to Binghamton, we'll take you down there.
That'd be a great trip. So, Chris Tobin, you mentioned the New York Times Theater. What other kind of field trips have you been on with SBE that have just proven to be wow?
Oh, let's see. We did years ago the IDB teleport on Staten Island. That's now known as something else. The uplink facilities there. We've done meetings at the Old World Trade Center, rooftop at the transmitters. We have done many a meeting at the Empire State Building in both FM and TV facilities. We've done meetings, where else? At a couple of the theaters, Metropolitan Opera and other places. AM sites, a lot of the AM sites here in New Jersey, where we've done meetings and tours of the directional AMs. That's always a fun one, especially during the springtime with the weather. And what else have we had? We've had a lot. It varies. And then we've had a lot of manufacturers who drive in with, big, what do you call vans? Trailers for their mobile studios and stuff. And, I think Orban comes to mind as one of them. And we've had that too. And we've had a lot of and we did some stuff with FEMA too, if memory serves me right. We had a couple of meetings with the FEMA folks and the FCC. So it runs the gamut.
Oh, and we toured 4 Times Square. Was that an SBE meeting or something else?
That was SBE also, yeah. 4 Times Square with John Lyons. He manages the rooftop there. Yep, 4 Times Square when it first started out with their antenna structure, the combining system, which I think is Shively, if memory serves me right, and their antenna system, what they have up there, there's a couple of DTVs and several FMs.
Just before I moved to Nashville, the big stadium where the Tennessee Titans play, which is now known as LP Field, was fairly new, and our SBE chapter toured the media facilities inside there. Just basically, I don't know what all was there. I know there were tons of circuits coming in, and a room for cross-connecting things and making sure that the right ISDN circuit got to the right radio booth. But then there was a ton for TV too. But I need to reschedule that for our SBE chapter and see about LP Field as a venue. You're watching This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode number 230. It's a War Stories episode, and we'll get to a war story here. I want to ask our guest and co-host, what's been keeping you busy lately? And I'll begin just by re-mentioning that move of some of my radio stations. We moved 3 stations from one place in Greenville, Mississippi, small town, market number, I don't know, 210 or something, and moved those to a new location. And we have no budget or very little budget, so we got some automation systems from Rivendell. We bought some used computers, built them up. We then contracted with Fred and Scott Spillers at Rivendell to come do on-site configuration and some maintenance for a year, and that sped things up quite a bit. Although our staff was very used to the old automation system, so the installation went quickly. But then figuring out the new system took a while. I think on a previous episode I may have shown a few pictures. So I need to do it. I need to go through and do a whole video expose on the system. But it's really pretty simple. The whole station fits into essentially 3 racks, and one of those is satellite receivers and GPIO boxes from Axia to take all the GPOs from the satellite receiver and turn them into GPIs in the Axia system. There's another rack that's just full of the automation playout machines, a couple of servers, a Windows machine, and the EAS gear. And then the last rack is audio processing and STL transmitters. And then there's one control room. And to hook up that one control room, there's one Cat6 cable that goes over the ceiling to the other end of the building where that control room is. And so without the technology of doing audio over IP, I just have no idea how I could have gotten that done. And we did get it done. And plus, because it's all IP stuff, almost every piece of gear has an Ethernet jack on it, including most of the satellite receivers. So remote access is just fabulous. I can remote into the audio console, the audio console's electronics and I/O devices. I can remote into the 2 Rivendell servers. One's a main, one's a backup. I can remote into any of the stuff. And if you're an engineer who remotes into stuff anyway, then this is no big deal. You know how that works. But it's pretty cool to. I posted a picture of it, a screenshot on Facebook, that my big monitor at the office, I can have all 4 automation systems and our Windows machine, which captures a lot of FTP stuff and weather forecasts, and then our 2 servers. I can have all that on the screen at the same time, which makes it easy to make changes, do software updates. When that shell shock thing was noticed with the bash program in Unix and Linux, we were able to update that just boom, 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 one after another on these remote screens, and suffered we had nobody at the station at that time. We suffered very little off-air time, maybe 90 seconds per station. And had we had somebody there, actually I could have gone ahead and figured out a way to play some audio on each station, but it was just quicker to go ahead take each station off for 90 seconds late at night. So that's my little bit of a story. This world of doing everything by IP is just, 10 years ago I was singing its praises and not even really sure of what all the benefits were. And now 10 years later, and having experienced it time and time again, it's just amazing what you can do with this. Even listening to the stations in real time, I put a Telos Zip 1 at the station. I've got one at the office. So not even having a 5, 10, or 20-second delay by streaming, I've got a literally 110 millisecond delay from any station I want to listen to back to my office while I'm working on it. So it's just amazing what you can do. And I only bring it up, and I'm excited about it because I want to share it with you, because I just remain flabbergasted at what you can do. As it has come up in SBE quite a bit, just helping engineers get educated on how to make this stuff happen, on the fundamentals of IP, and then taking those fundamentals and turning them into really useful practices and processes that help you as an engineer out just enormously. Okay, that's my speech. Eric, I want to get into your war story in just a minute. We're going to take a break for a commercial. And Chris Tobin, when we come back, can you foreshadow something that you might be telling us about? Either a war story, sure, or a strong tip. Can you foreshadow something? Wet our whistle a little bit?
Let's do a tip. For IP audio.
Okay, good. You're an expert at that. Have been for a while. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is also brought to you by my friends at Lavo. They make an audio console. No, they make a lot of audio consoles. They make some audio consoles that are just enormous. You can't reach your arms from one end to the other. But for radio, they make a series of consoles. Some of them are in the Crystal line, and one of them is this new console called the Crystal Clear. It consists of a rack mount unit that has all your audio inputs and outputs. It's just 1 RU tall. It has Ethernet on it. It'll do AES-67 and Ravenna, and it connects to your normal business network as well. It has a couple of mic inputs on it already. But the thing that makes it cool is for the operators. It has a touchscreen interface. There it is on the screen. It uses a multi-touch touchscreen that is actually an HP computer running Windows 8. And it has an application. You don't see the Windows 8 part. You boot it up, bam, there's the application. And you have an audio console in front of you. I'd always dreamed of this as a possibility. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, I lived in Memphis, and I was talking to the folks at Auditronics about, hey, could we ever do a big touchscreen interface console? And they were, I don't know, that sounds pretty futuristic. And they had plenty of other things to build now. And so Lavo's gone and done it. This multi-touch touchscreen interface. Multi-touch, of course, means you can move several faders at once. You can be pushing a fader and an off button at the same time. You can be turning your headphone volume up and down while you move a fader up and down, or turn a channel on and off. And the other cool thing about a software-defined console is you're not limited by hardware buttons. Now you punch a button and it opens up a context that's appropriate for what you're doing right then. So if you open up an option box, an option button for a microphone, you get microphone options. If you open up one for a codec, you get codec type options like mix minus and left right channel, things like that. With the microphones, you can open up and get auto gain, which automatically sets the gain of the mic preamp for a particular talent or a particular microphone. It's just an amazing technology, and I really believe that someday you're going to see more and more consoles doing this. We may never get rid of, not that we have to, we never be rid of the physical console interface. That's a real thing that a lot of folks like to be able to touch and feel. But for now, if you want to get into multi-touch touchscreen, check out this Lavo Crystal Clear. Go to lavo.com, and that's spelled L-A-W-O. Pronounced Lavo with a very light V. It's a German last name. Lavo.com, L-A-W-O, and go to the Crystal Clear console. We appreciate Lavo for sponsoring this portion of This Week in Radio Tech. All righty. Let's see. Chris Tobin's going to have a tip for us, but first, Eric Adler, you've got a war story that has something to do with, what, television? Tell us about your story here, Eric.
Yes. When I was new here at WSKG back in 2008, I had come from a production and studio engineering background, so I had never been to a transmitter site before. for television. I received a phone call from one of the other engineers late in the evening on November 1st, and he said he was going to come pick me up, going to grab whatever digital television equipment that we had handy, and go out to a site in Corning, New York. It was my first time going out to that site. We spent, an hour and a half on the road to get there, get up to the site, and we had received complaints that it was off the air. At that time, this was before the big transition in spring of 2009. But this station was digital only. It was channel 30. And at that time, it was picking up channel 42 from Binghamton and rebroadcasting it. So we got on site. He had already been on site and used the equipment on site and come back. And we couldn't pull in channel 42 from Binghamton. And I pulled out one of the coupon converter boxes, and we had 3 of them with us. One of them magically could get it. We went through everything we could try. We couldn't get the professional decoders to decode it or see it at all. We spent hours there testing everything we could think of. And finally that night, or early in the morning, we decided to come back and let the other engineer have a shot at it in the morning. He was able to get a spectrum analyzer on hand and brought it out there. So the other 2 engineers at the time went out there, went with the spectrum analyzer, and very quickly discovered what the problem was.
Okay.
So someone had actually turned on a channel 43 in the same building that we were trying to receive channel 42 in. And as it is described, it looked like an umbrella over Bart Simpson's head. So if you've ever seen ATSC TV, it's 8 VSB.
Yeah.
It looks just like that, and there's just a little carrier right there. So interesting issue. We talked to the people running the station. They had just turned it on to finish a CP as they were changing channels. So it wasn't an issue for long. It was off that day, but just goes to show it helps to have the proper test equipment so you can see what signals you're looking at and not just rely on the receivers.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. So now long term, what's going to happen with channel 43 trying to receive channel 42?
Well, that was someone just turning on to meet a CP.
Okay.
They turned on for a day, and then they were moving channels, so they ended up on a different channel.
Okay.
This was fall of 2008. The ATSC transition at that time was targeted for February of 2009. Mm-hmm. Then it got pushed to April and partially June.
So turning the transmitter on just for a short time was just to meet the requirements of a construction permit. So they can say, yes, we built the facilities, we put it on the air. But now we're applying to change channels.
I believe that's the case.
Yeah. So I've seen that happen several times. Just building a facility, and unfortunately, it's kind of a trick that you play with the rules. And sometimes it's a trick to allow yourself more time for the financial picture to get right to finish a project that you've applied for. But it seems, like, okay, we got to do this exercise to prove to the FCC that we were serious enough to build the facility, although we're not going to run it right now. We're going to turn it off and apply for what we really want. It's interesting and kind of a shame that the law works that way, but those are the unintended consequences of rulemaking. That kind of thing happens. Wow. Chris Tobin, you had a tip to pass along for us.
Well, yes. Eric mentions you have to have the right tools and stuff of that sort. And you were mentioning earlier about the IP and audio, and 10 years ago what you thought it was doing and where it could go, and 10 years later here we are. I've been working with a lot of folks. I'm actually working with 2 clients right now. Both of them are IPTV related. One is broadcast over the air with an IPT solution, and the other one is a strictly IPTV, no over-the-air TV signal. And I've been working with them on IP video linking between their studios and remote locations for producing content. And I've been using a website for this for a long time, and I think Joe Talbot and a few others at Axia and Telos probably have used it too. And it's called whichvoip.com.
Which VoIP, yeah.
Which VoIP. Now, it's powered by another product. I forget the name. Maybe Visualware comes to mind, but this particular website, you can get access to the VoIP test, speed test. Now, I did a presentation on a paper up in Canada last month regarding how to make money doing audio IP remotes and also video. And I used this as an example, and I had a lot of folks ask questions. Well, what's the difference between this and just using Ookla, the speed test? And
Okay, sure.
Interestingly enough, Ookla works very well. Don't get me wrong. It just gives you limited information.
Now,
and
you say Ookla, that's the server technology, and the common website people go to is speedtest.net.
That's correct.
Right?
And yes,
they have,
that's correct.
If you have a mobile phone, they have apps for tablets and mobile phones. And
Right.
I'm a little what's the word? I'm a little OCD about this. I mean, I do speed tests all the time just for curiosity, just to find out are the places I go to getting better over time, or are things getting worse over time, or where do we stand? Where could I stream from? And in fact, I'm sitting right now in a conference room at Millionaire in Albany, New York, and they said, "Well, your internet connection will be our Wi-Fi," and I couldn't even stay on the Wi-Fi for 10 seconds. It just kept cutting me off. So luckily I've got a Verizon 4G stick with me, and it was giving me 8 megs down and about 4 or 5 megs up. And I thought, okay, that's good enough to do the show. And in fact, it looks pretty good. I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to butt in, but this speed test thing is amazing. But it's not really it's not all you got to know if you're going to be able to do an IP remote television or audio.
That's correct. And the reason I mentioned speedtest.net or the Ookla technology is it gives you limited information. So when you do a speed test, everyone assumes, oh, I've got 20 megs up, 50 megs down, I'm great, there should be no issues. It's like, no, that's just the speed test is just the parameters that you're working within. Remember, we go back into the days of ISDN, T1s, and other sorts, sonnet rings, and the phone company managed that pipe they gave us. So the pipe had such a size, and I'm using my hands above and below each other to demonstrate the boundaries of a pipe, and that's the speed test. The speed test is what we can do between those two pieces, what goes on. How that speed gets from one end to the other, from point A to point B, well, that's where things get really, the devil's in the details. So at the presentation I did, I showed this whichvoip.com site, and what's nice about this is it shows you the information you need to know. One, the speed test. So I just did a speed test here in the office, so my download speed is 20 megabits per second. But it says of a 70 megabit pipe. So I know for a fact that my ISP provider has me on a pipe that I know is just about 80 megabits. So this information is correct. I was able to confirm it. Then it gives me my upload speed of 11 megabits, which is just about right. It's actually a little off, but I'm running some other stuff in the office, so I'm probably taking some bandwidth away. And then it proceeds to tell me more information. And the other information it tells you, and this is what's good about this program, this site, oops, I get this right, is it tells you the return time, or the RTT, return time travel.
Round trip time.
Round trip time,
delta
sorry.
In the round trip time over several tests, right?
Oh yeah, and the trick is you do the first test, you get a quick look-see of your jitter and packet loss. Remember, in IP, there's buffer, jitter, and packet loss to start with. Then there's other elements that work intertwine with those. Understand those three, and then you have a chance of, as you point out, getting the job done. Doing speed test or being OCD about speed test is not bad. Matter of fact, I encourage it. And the reason I encourage it is because...
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. I appreciate that. That's good to know.
Well, no. But hear me out. The reason why I encourage it is because we now are in control of our destiny on the IP pipe, the IP highway. Yeah. Whereas before, you'd go to GTE, Ameritech, Bell South, or 9X, we'll go back in time, and say, I need a pipe between point A to point B, 64 kilobits in bandwidth, or 1.544 megabits. Can you give it to me? And if you can you guarantee it? They say, yes. Then I walk away, I plug in my endpoints, whether it's a ISDN codec on both ends, or a T1 frame on both ends, and then I just do my thing, because I know, I've been told and guaranteed by the person in the middle, things will go well. Fast forward to today, now I'm the person in the middle has to guarantee that's going to happen. So if you want to call it OCD, fine. But speed test over time makes sense, because in Ethernet or IP world, time is everything. So today, at this moment in time, the time now is just coming up on 2:56 p.m. I'll do a speed test. I could do it again in 5 minutes. I guarantee the speed test will be slightly off. If it's within a couple of percent, you're fine. If it varies by 10 or 15%, be concerned. These are the metrics you want to use and work with. So the same test I did earlier gave me a jitter of 0.7 milliseconds. That's great. Gave me
Wow,
packet
that's
loss
slow.
of 0%. Then it goes on to do an algorithm test and tells me what my mean opinion score would be. So if you're doing VoIP, you know that the MOS figure is important. So anything
Mean
over
opinion score,
4.0.
that's MOS. Okay.
Yeah, mean opinion score, and it's based on many other things, and we don't have time for that right now. But it gives you a quick score, so it tells you my connection will give me a MOS score of 4.4, which is really good. And then the round trip time consistency, it gives you a bar graph, so you get an idea of whether it's a straight line. I'm using my hand to go across a straight line, or using my hand as a jagged event. So if it's jagged, then you know you have some issues on the network connection. And then it goes on to give you a summary, a quick summary, so it's visual. So you get these green dots, red dots, or orange. So it tells you download speed, upload speed, consistency of service, which is going to tell you that your connection should produce a constant stream of data. However, there are times where the sound may likely be broken. But since I'm getting a MOS score of 4.4, odds are that's going to be a very, very occasional breakup. And then everything else is green light. So right away, I can look at this connection and say, I'm going to be okay. I did this when I was up in Canada at the hotel I was at. And I was actually able to demonstrate to the IT administrator, and he confirmed it off the record, that in the hotel rooms, they purposely cripple the connectivity. And I demonstrated how they did it. He was very upset with the fact that I found it out. But in the conference centers down the hill, I was able to get full access bandwidth, very little issue, and I was able to actually make connections work. And they had their reasons for crippling it. I get it. I'm not going to repeat it. But I was able to demonstrate it using this particular website's connection. So when you're traveling and doing stuff, or not even traveling, if you're just working in your facility, give this a try on your home network, your transmitter site, your remote location, and you'd be surprised what you're going to find and be like, wow, I really do need to do a little more homework on this stuff and understand better how it works. So that's my tip. It's a little long-winded, but that's my tip.
No, I know the test you're talking about, and I believe it's a Java-based test. So you got to have Java running in your browser.
Yes,
for
it
that
is.
one,
Yes, it is.
That one to work. There are about a year and a half ago, I got really frustrated with only the Java-based tests being out there, and I wanted to see what other tests competitors to that Which VoIP test might bring. Although the Which VoIP test, if it's the one that has a bunch of tabs on the left-hand side, it does test for lots of cool things. It's a very complete test. You just have to have Java running on your browser, which when they came up with the test was much easier to do than it is now with all the pop-ups and warnings that you get. I did a white paper on this subject, actually, and I won't go through it right now, but I'll put a link to it in the show notes that lists a number of different tests, test websites for testing your IP connectivity to see if it's actually going to be useful to you. Not just the speed, but is it going to be useful for real-time audio or video communications? And there are a couple of tests that don't require Java. And you know what? Since I wrote this paper, there may be even more along. There's also a test that is so cool. It takes several minutes. It's from the folks at berkeley.edu. It's called the ICSI Netalyzer. And it analyzes all kinds of things about your router and your connection. It points out some things that it thinks are bad that may not actually be bad, but it's a fun test to run, and that's in the white paper. I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. We're running low on time. Eric Adler, I want you to be prepared when we come back from this commercial break to give us your tip or just one more thought on what's on your horizon, what you've been doing lately, something you can share with your fellow engineers here on This Week in Radio Tech. This is episode number 230, a War Stories episode. And our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Telos. They are makers of a lot of phone systems. You know, Steve Church, 30 years ago, came up with the DSP enhanced telephone hybrid. And it made possible really clear two-way conversations with full duplex between talent at a radio station and phone callers. And, of course, technology has moved along a lot since then. There were no cell phones then. There was no voice over IP then. Everything was POTS or TDM-based transmission. And so as technology has moved along and as telephone service has, in some ways, gotten worse, we've had to figure out at Telos ways to actually make the call sound better, even though we're starting with a call that may sound worse due to really low bitrate codecs that some VoIP providers end up using along the transmission path that you may have no control over. So what you need to make those sound as good as possible is a hybrid, a telephone hybrid that has a long tail or tap. There's a couple different ways you can describe it, but basically does echo cancellation for a longer period of time. And the Telos HX6 is a phone system that has the best technology that Telos has possible to throw at a POTS phone line or any connection, even if the caller on the other end is on a cell phone or a VoIP connection. So the TELUS HX6 is a 6-line talk show system. For a lot of stations, 6 lines is all they really need. Hey, if you're doing a talk show and you got 6 lines ringing in, or you're talking to people, it may easily be 45 minutes before you get to that 6th caller. So you may have a 12-line system now. Consider a 6-line system. If you can downsize a bit and yet go up in quality, consider the HX6. It has 2 hybrids built into it, 6 POTS phone lines. There is an ISDN option available for U.S. and Canada. Sorry, it's not available outside of U.S. and Canada. And it's controlled by the TELUS VSET 6. Gorgeous desktop phone with a bright color display, caller ID on there. It's got all the functions that you want. It's just a terrific phone. It can be run in a producer mode to do call screening, or a talent mode to put callers right on the air. There's good metering on the front of the HX6. Send levels, receive levels, both studio and caller side on both of these send and receive levels. And I would just encourage you to check this thing out. If you're an Axia plant, if you've got a live wire in your studios already, you can use the live wire option that's built right in to the TELUS HX6. Or if you don't need any analog I/O on it, if you're all live wire, then you can go with the HX6's little brother, the IQ6. It's exactly the same, but it has no analog or AES audio I/O. It's all live wire on the back. So check it out if you would. Go to telus-systems.com and look at the HX6 6-line phone system. Great technology, and it's compatible with all of our future stuff with the VSET phones. Thanks to TELUS for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're about out of time. Eric Adler, you got a final word for us, a tip, trick? What can you teach us, sir?
Nothing all too new. Just want to stress, talk to your fellow engineers at other stations. If you have a local SBE chapter, at least visit for a meeting, if not join. That's it.
You can learn a lot. You know, in the ham world, they call somebody who's your teacher, they call him your Elmer. That's kind of a cute phrase, and I'm sure it has a grand meaning in the long run. But you go to an SBE meeting, and like you said, Eric, you can find somebody who you can be comfortable talking to. Hey, at our SBE meetings, there's a fellow that I really enjoy chatting with a lot, a couple of them, David Wilson and Gibson Pritchard. David's a radio engineer, a contract guy, and Gibson Pritchard used to be in radio. Now he's the chief engineer for the CBS affiliate, TV affiliate in Nashville. And boy, it's just a wealth of information. My goodness, talking to both of these guys. And you'll find that within your local SBE chapter. If you're not a member, my goodness, go to sbe.org, find your nearest local chapter, find out when the next meeting is, and attend it. And I think you'll find that you'll have a good time and good conversation too, camaraderie and learning. Chris Tobin, any final thought as we sign off?
No. I think Eric covered it with the SBE, which is fine, and you've covered all the others, so I think we're good. I don't want to hold you up from your travels.
Okay, yeah, the Southwest plane is going to leave without me. They won't wait around for me. Well, I've been coming to you from Million Air at the Albany, New York airport, and I appreciate Million Air for letting me use their conference room for doing the show. Chris Tobin from somewhere in Newark, New Jersey, thank you very much for your attendance here today. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Yeah, I'm from my office here in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, by the way, if people want to reach you, Chris, I'm sorry I didn't say this at the beginning of the show. You provide consultative services for all things radio and some TV, but you specialize in IP transmission of said signals, including live remotes, STLs, remote studios, all these things. You have got the keys to the kingdom when it comes to making IP audio work for people. Where can folks reach you if they need to send you an email?
Well, the folks have been reaching me very well lately at support@ipcodex.com. It makes it real easy for everybody to remember.
And that's in the show notes, too. Support@ipcodex.com on Chris Tobin's link. Eric Adler, thank you for being with us. Chapter chair of SBE Chapter Numero Uno in Binghamton, New York, and also an engineer at WSKG Public Broadcasting. Thank you very much for joining us. By the way, it's a pretty console you have behind you there. Not one of our sponsors, but it looks like a big Wheatstone console.
Yes, it's a Wheatstone D9. Thank you very much, Kirk.
That's a big honking pretty console. And thank you for taking the time to be with us, Eric. Good to meet you in person at the SBE meeting, and good to have you on the show.
Good talking to you guys.
Thank you. And our show's been brought to you by Axia Audio and the 5-year Axia warranty Also by Lavo and the crystal clear audio console, the touchscreen interface, and also by the Telos HX6 6-line talk show system. I own one. You should too. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Oh, and thanks to Suncast for producing the show today. Went to great effort to make all this happen. I certainly appreciate it. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.